Oh, yeah.
Well, hello.
Hello.
This is episode 14 of the Pitlane Collective Podcast, and we're kind of settling into these little remote versions, aren't we? We had some audio blips last week, but hopefully we've solved them.
I mean, fingers crossed. We had a bit of a technical issue before we started recording, but hopefully I sound lovely, apart from my voice, my throat.
Yeah, what's going on there? Do you want to elaborate on that?
I think I've got a bit of a throat infection. I had a bit of a sore throat for about 3 or 4 days now. It's really doing me head in. Yeah, I think I've got a little infection that's doing me head in. Doctor's in a bit, so hopefully I'll be mended for the next episode and I'll sound even more lovely.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed it's not something that affects your podcasting abilities.
They were already quite bad anyway.
Awful.
Yeah. So that would take it below the line of acceptability, I think. But,
we'll give it our best shot, man. We'll give it our best shot. At least you weren't ill for the little day trip that we had, which we kind of alluded to in last week's episode, and we can now go into a bit more detail about, can't we?
I was not ill. I was feeling great. We had a trip to Silverstone, didn't we?
We did. We even tried to take some footage, so we'll kind of intersperse it somewhere in this episode. But we went to the Silverstone circuit. The first time either of us have been to an actual current Grand Prix circuit. I think we kind of talked about it on a previous episode that we'd been to Alton Park, which I think was your first time at a track, wasn't it? Like a racetrack. Yeah. And I've been to that. I've been to Croft up in sort of Newcastle, and I've been to Donington. I don't think anything really prepared us for the sheer sort of scale of Silverstone. It was pretty epic, wasn't it?
It was like its own city. It was just, as soon as you walk through the gates, it was just absolutely, the infrastructure of the place is just massive. It made Alton look like a field, essentially.
Yeah. It essentially is, isn't it?
Yeah, but yeah, it was crazy big.
I think all the tracks that we've been to, especially Alton, they're obviously a lot smaller, and they're not the kind of safety category that Silverstone's got. Like Silverstone's like a grade 1 circuit, and obviously Alton and Donington and all that aren't. But for those tracks, Alton especially, you turn up and you kind of drive over a bridge, and then you basically park in a field, and there's the track. And then you just kind of walk around. And it's an amazing experience. Yeah, Silverstone was like turning up to an airport. And
it literally was, wasn't it? Oh,
you park miles away. And then it just kind of rams home how big that circuit is. We were getting goosebumps walking around, pointing out the different corners and thinking like, oh, that happened there.
The history that's happened there. Tell you what it was like. It's like certain places, I think I said to you on the day, certain places you just walk in and you can tell that there's like so much history and so much, the environment holds it, didn't it? And you walk through the gates of Silverstone, it was immediately that. It was just like all the years of mad stuff that's happened at that racetrack just immediately came flooding back, and it was like, it was crazy. It's like when someone would walk into like Anfield or Wembley for the first time, you can just, the infrastructure holds the amazing memories that's happened there. Yeah, it was something else. And we sat in a grandstand.
Yeah, it was pretty special, wasn't it? We thought we were being super prepared. We turned up with camping chairs and umbrellas in case, the elements threw everything at us. And we didn't need either of them because they'd opened the grandstand. Or they'd opened 3 grandstands. So we went and sat in the grandstand by Luffield. And it was amazing. Like, such a cool view. Got to see a lot of different racing throughout the day. It was pretty busy, to be fair. The actual event that we'd gone to was the British GT. We saw that at Alton, and we thought, let's carry on. And I think the biggest takeaway that I had from the day, or one of the biggest ones, was just how kind of accessible it was to go watch racing at Silverstone. Like you look at, obviously you look at the Grand Prix tickets and it's hundreds and hundreds of pounds.
Not getting much change from like 500 quid, are you?
And then you're looking at, you know, grandstands and stuff like that. It's an expensive trip, and it's something that we both want to do and will do. But I think it was 25 quid to go watch the British GT. Bit of fuel, long old drive for us, but a day out watching race cars at Silverstone for around 50 quid.
Yeah. No, like there was no extra charge for the grandstands. They were just free to sit in. Obviously, we bought our own food and drink, which cut the cost even more. So yeah, it was like a really doable day out if you want to go to like one of the most famous racetracks. Well, certainly the most famous racetrack in England, but one of the most famous racetracks in the world.
Yeah. And it's like it's something as well that it gave us is we were talking about. Obviously, we want to go to the Grand Prix, but I don't know about like I definitely felt like it gave me a taste of where I'd want to be, where I'd want to position myself. Like I think we both said the ability to sit in one of the grandstands. It just made me go, right, if I was watching F1, I'd definitely want to be up here.
Yeah,
like I definitely want to be sitting somewhere up here, and you know, we walked around a lot of the track. We got to kind of see Maggots and Beckett's, and we walked all through there, and like stunning place. But you were like, oh my god, this would be so busy with general admission. Yeah. So it almost, as well as being a little day out in itself, it also kind of served as like a scouting mission, almost.
A little sighter,
like a little, yeah. But the racing itself was pretty spectacular as well, wasn't it? You've got like GT cars going round. We had some single seaters going round. We had the Ginetta and Ginetta Juniors going round. It was pretty special. Saw a couple of incidents, a couple of
not as much
mistakes.
As Ulton, but Ulton was peeing down, so. The weather stayed like really nice for Silverstone, didn't it? So there wasn't much in the way of incidents, but there was certainly a few. But yeah, the racing was really good. Got to see our boy Raffaele Marshmallow again.
Yeah,
lifelong fans for 4 weeks.
Yeah, we kind of picked him out really in Ulton, didn't we? We bumped into a couple of friends there who were like, "Oh, Raffaele Marshmallow's racing here," and we were like, yeah.
Is he? Cool.
And neither of us were just like, we should look him up. And since then, diehard fans.
Oh, yeah.
Diehard fans.
Cut me, I believe, Marshmallow.
We've nicknamed him Marshmallow, and we just, we were looking out for him. So obviously going to the British GT at Silverstone, we had to watch out for him, and he didn't have as good a race, did he?
He wasn't, I can't remember where he finished. He certainly didn't win. Yeah, he wasn't as quick as he usually is.
In our experience,
because I think when we went to Ulton, it was clearly him, and there was another guy, wasn't there, who were clearly the fastest out the field. That's the fella, yeah.
Jules Gounon, yeah.
They were like clearly the fastest in the field, and you could tell they were. But yeah, he seemed to struggle around Silverstone, really.
I think a few of them were like the winners were. Well, in fairness, I was going to say the winners were guys I've not really come across, but in fairness, most of the grid
we've only heard of about 4 of them.
Yeah, and it's definitely cool. It's something that I've been like trying to keep tabs on a little bit more now. The British GT, it's quite cool to sort of watch another series and start to get into it, and you start to realize that two guys. I mean, we've talked about this in previous episodes, but two guys who've basically just watched F1. There's a lot more racing out there, and some of it's pretty good. And
it's so different as well. It's like everything about the racing is totally different to obviously the cars on the track, the speed of the cars on track. But then you got like the pit stops with something I learned. They take about half an hour. Like, it's like it's crazy. You just got one guy going around changing all the tires, and like it's a totally different package of racing. It's not like there's not many similarities. The only similarity was the track we were racing around, because everything else was just totally different, but in a good way. Like it wasn't like a boring way. It was really like it was enthralling. You could sit there and watch it, and it would get exciting, especially because we were sat in a grandstand. You only get to see that small chunk of the track, so we had like the rest of the race on our phone, didn't we? So we could still keep track of what was going on around the track. So yeah, it was really, really good.
It was live streamed on YouTube, wasn't it?
Yeah.
While we were sat in the grandstand, we were able to sort of, on a slight delay, watch what was going on through the rest of the track, which was pretty cool. So it's definitely something I've found when you're at tracks when I was at tracks previously is like there'd be an incident and you'd hear safety car over the tannoy or whatever, but you wouldn't. You'd have no idea what's happened. It's like, there's 8 cars in the wall, and you're like, oh, that sounds. And then you just see the safety car toddle past you.
What I would say as well is that was one of the main differences. Well, definitely, yeah, one of the differences between Silverstone and Alton is, to be fair, we didn't have to watch it on our phones because all the tannoys were working.
Yeah,
so you could actually hear the commentary, but it seemed wherever we stood in Alton, there was maybe like 1 out of 10 tannoys working, so you couldn't really hear what was going on. You'd just hear him get a bit excited, and it'd be like, oh, that happened.
He's getting higher pitched.
Yeah,
that must mean
something exciting must have happened there.
Yeah, it was definitely easier to keep track of the racing at Silverstone, wasn't it? But yeah, that was. I mean, it was a long old drive for us. Great day out though, and I think we've sort of told ourselves that we're going to do more of this now. Yeah, try and get to some more tracks.
I'll tell you what else it's led on to as well. Because obviously I haven't been very well, so I've been chilling on the couch for the past couple of days. I watched the Fanatec GT World Challenge, baby.
Nice.
Yeah, it was live yesterday. It was Brands Hatch, and I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. It was going live. Raffaele Marshmallow put it on pole.
My boy.
Different series. I think he races in quite a few series. He did mention that around the world. Yeah. So I was mainly watching. If he hadn't been there, I probably would have turned it off. But then I was going down the list of the drivers. Obviously, he was on pole, and Valentino Rossi was racing. Well done for acting surprised. I know I told you yesterday.
I know.
Peek behind the curtain.
The acting skills are. Yeah, the acting skills were pretty good there.
So obviously, world champion motorcycle racing dude.
Yeah, like insanely successful.
They were saying, so like we experienced a bit of it. Obviously, when they have like the drivers sat there and you can go up and you can like get a picture and get an autograph. They were saying it was all pretty busy, but his line was like all the way out the like the little paddock bit that it was in. He was like, clearly he didn't do very well. Spoiler alert. I can't remember the position he came. He didn't break the top 10. However, just quickly, there was a sprint race after the main event, and he came second.
Nice.
So he got a podium, but in the main GT race that I watched, like the main race, he flunked it. What I thought was funny is because I think,
is he the pro or is he the amateur? Because obviously in the GT races,
sure. I'm not sure. To be honest,
surely he's got to be the pro.
You would think so. But I tell you, who definitely is the pro, Raffaele Marshmallow. So he put it on pole, clearly the fastest on the grid, and then he drove first. So for anyone who doesn't know, it's another Pro-Am series. So you have a professional driver and an amateur driver. The commentators made no bones about it. The amateur driver was not very good. So basically, Raffaele Marshmallow needs to put in the biggest gap he can possibly put in for him to have a chance at winning this race. So I think he drove for about 35 minutes of an hour race. He pitted right at the end of the window. There was like a 10-minute window, 25 and 35 minutes, and he took it as far as he could, naturally. And he gave him like a 16-second gap. You would think, wow, he can't mess this up. This other guy's only in the car for 20, 25 minutes. Come on, he can't mess this up. And the guy behind him, who was the pro now, so they'd gone a different way and started with the amateur, I believe. And they'd sort of switched it. A lot of the teams seem to do that. I think the Marshmallow team did it for a very good reason, because they needed that gap. And he gave him the gap 15 and a half, 16 seconds. And the guy behind him was catching him at about a rate of 2 seconds a lap. It was like 1.6 to 2 seconds a lap. And he just squeaked it over the line about 4/10 clear. Oh. If there'd have been another lap, he would have been overtaken, because the guy behind him was flying.
Wow.
And then
that must have been terrifying for that driver.
Yeah. And then, so obviously, because they won, they interviewed Marshmallow and his teammate, and they interviewed Raffaele first, and he was not happy. Like he was. You could tell he was fuming, and the guy was standing next to him, and he was just saying, "We can't keep doing this. Like every weekend. Like I'm not always going to be able to put in that gap." I think they mentioned they were going to Zandvoort next. He was like, "It's a track I'm not as comfortable round as Brands, so I might only be able to pull like a 5 or 6 second gap, and he needs to do better." And then they swapped over
in the interview.
And then they swapped around, and to be fair, you could tell the other guy was like, I don't know what's happening at the minute. I just can't seem to drive the car as well as, well, not as well as he can, because that's not happening. But he just can't seem to get a good run of form going, and he's been struggling for a little while. But yeah, it got a bit eggy. Entertaining though. Good race.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's something, yeah, it's definitely something to have like a pro and then a less experienced driver in the same team and swapping over halfway through. It's got to be frustrating to be a quick pro.
Yeah.
And then to hand over to a guy who, to be nice, isn't quick.
No.
And just wait and be like, well,
but like,
is he gonna, like, how soon is he gonna lose this?
There's not quick, and then there's like that. Like for him to be for the pro to be comfortably pulling out a 15, 16 second gap in 30 minutes, and then for you to lose all that in 30 minutes. It's like, come on. Like all you've got to do at the bare minimum is keep pace with the guy behind. You don't have to pull out, just don't lose any.
Well, or don't lose such big chunks. I mean, you can lose like half a second somewhere or whatever.
There was moments throughout the race in the first sector he was losing 6/10 in one sector.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I wonder how he stacks up because obviously they've run a strategy where they've put the pro in first and then put the amateur in, and everyone, or lots of people, have done the reverse. So I wonder how his teammate stacks up with the other AMs.
Yeah. I don't.
It's got to make an awkward team environment, that though.
Yeah, like
basically having an interview and being like, "He's crap," and like, "I've just got to do as best I can, and then hope he doesn't bin it."
Yeah, I guess.
And then they move the microphone over, and the other guy's like,
I guess for the professionals though, they kind of know what they're signing up for.
Yeah,
like the amateur, or even if they're not 100% amateurs, they're much less experienced drivers. They know they're not going to be quick. There's a reason they're not a professional. So I guess, but yeah, I mean, to have that much of a big drop off it's got to be annoying. Especially, for instance, if he'd have pulled out a 16-second gap and then he'd have lost it. How annoyed?
You'd be fuming,
would you be? But then what's the alternative? To swap around, let the amateur go first and be 20 seconds behind the rest of the grid, and then he's got to catch that up. That's not going to happen either, is it?
So it sounds like they got their strategy right.
I think they nailed it. As you say, just one more lap. Because a lot of them were on the alternate strategy of starting with the amateurs as soon as the window opened. They picked for the professional, but obviously he went to the very end. So like the last minute or so of the pit window being open, so he drove for like as long as he possibly could. But yeah, it was one of the first races I've watched like that hasn't been Formula One on the TV. I've actually watched more of them races in person, which is crazy. But it was still like it was exciting. I would absolutely watch it again and recommend people do watch that kind of racing because it's really good.
I was going to ask, so do you think you're going to be tuning into the next ones now?
Yeah.
You're going to try and keep up with that calendar?
Yeah, 100%. Like we'll have to check, but I'm almost certain he said it was Zandvoort next, or Zandvoort's coming up. Something about Zandvoort.
Nice.
So yeah, I think it's a series that I will definitely keep up to tabs with and see what's going on.
Yeah, because I think we've both sort of talked about it. We both want to try and start exploring other forms of racing. Like I've been trying to dig into IndyCar a little bit and enjoyed what I've seen there. And obviously we've both sort of seen GT stuff. You've been watching the Fanatec GT, so hopefully we can both start bringing that to the pod as well, and having little chits and chat about other areas of motorsport, not just
Yeah, it's
F1.
I think
Especially if F1's a sort of foregone conclusion in a lot of ways.
that, and it's not the be all and end all of motorsport, is it? It's like it's very easy to watch Formula One, then sort of turn your nose up at another series, because Formula One is the biggest and the best. It just is. But there's some really good racing to be seen elsewhere that's totally different and can be just as if not more exciting, as you say, at the minute, because Formula One is at the minute is a bit cut and dry.
So definitely, so watch this space, I guess, is the message, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we'll continue dipping our toes in the water of other types of racing. And we'll bring our findings back. I guess, being a predominantly F1 podcast, we probably should talk about Formula One now. Obviously, we're in a break week at the moment. We just had 2 races in Baku and Miami, and then we got 2 more coming up, I think, in short succession. We've got Imola and then Monaco, I believe. People are bringing lots of updates and stuff to Imola. It's going to be exciting to see kind of how the pecking order shakes out there. But I think the news for the past sort of week has been dominated by a interview that Helmut Marko has done, where he's kind of publicly come out and, I guess, drawn a line in the sand for the AlphaTauri driver Nyck de Vries, who hasn't been doing the best, shall we say. He's had a bit of a crap start to the season.
Yeah, so I think to set the scene on this one before you take over, it kicked off with, obviously, Nyck de Vries hasn't been doing great. And then Daniel Ricciardo was pictured getting a seat fitting in the AlphaTauri. Now, obviously, they come out and they were squashed quite quick, as like, of course he has, because just in case, you just never know.
Yeah.
So that was quashed quite quick as a story. But then, Helmut Marko was obviously approached and asked that in an interview, like, what's going on? And as basically said, there's no truth in it. We'd look towards the likes of Liam Lawson. And there's another guy.
There's no truth in Ricciardo replacing Nick.
Yeah. We'd look to our younger flock of drivers like Liam Lawson, and there's another guy, isn't there? His name. That's the fella, yeah. Before we looked at Daniel. But then one line that really stood out in that interview for me was he's been given the yellow card.
Yes.
Like, it's not quite a red, but he knows which way his bread's buttered, and if he carries on, he will be out. Essentially was what he was saying, wasn't it?
Yeah, I feel like it jumped out at me as well, because it's very common, or not very common, but it's quite common for drivers who are underperforming to start being put under pressure by the media, and typically the teams will just kind of be like, no, it's all good, like, he's carrying on with his development. Or, I mean, we saw it with Ricciardo and McLaren, like, last year. We saw it with Verstappen's teammates Gasly and Albon when they were struggling, and it's common for them to just kind of smooth things over a little bit and not kind of add any fuel to the fire. And then just kind of not give the media any answers, really. Just kind of be very political about it. And, I mean, in fairness, Helmut Marko is not one of the most sort of... he's not backwards in coming forward, shall we say.
He's not one to beat around the bush, is he?
No. He just says what he thinks with no filter. And clearly, in this instance, he's... I don't know, he's very publicly laid down a challenge for de Vries. He basically said, nothing's going to happen in the next 3 races. He is where he is in the next 3 races. But he has to improve, because Yuki's been doing some good things with this car, and he hasn't. And I think it's telling what, the other side of what he said there. You can read it and go, yeah, he's secure for 3 races, but you could basically also see, after 3 races, he is not secure.
Yeah.
I think one of the... I started digging a little bit into de Vries's kind of why he joined AlphaTauri and kind of what they've done there, because, as you've said, they've got, Red Bull have got juniors lined up, and typically Red Bull will use AlphaTauri as their junior team. They always did with Toro Rosso. They've carried on with AlphaTauri. That's why Yuki's there. And it did seem like a strange decision to put de Vries in. He had a good performance in Monza last year, but the guy's 28. He's got some experience. He's not. I don't know. He's not got like. I wouldn't say he's the most decorated of drivers when you look at kind of his results through his sort of career so far. He won Formula 2, but he won it after 3 years and 3 seasons of competing. He is Formula E champion, but I think a lot of people admittedly, I haven't watched all of that season, but I've seen highlights, and I think luck was a big part in that. And that's not trying to diminish him in any way, but you do have to admit, there's seasons where the champion will be lucky, and they still keep the title, but it is what it is. So yeah, I guess like he's kind of, on the one hand, he's been lucky with his career, and he's got so-so results, and then he gets put in a Williams, gets a couple of points on the one track that the Williams is really good at, and is partnered up with Latifi. So in fairness, most people will look decent next to Latifi. And then, just sort of swept up, put in an AlphaTauri. And a lot of his interviews at the start of this season where he's bringing the experience. I think that's how he's tried to sort of spin the whole kind of, and like basically the backstory, all his results, all his, performances that haven't been amazing or whatever. He's basically trying to say, I've done a lot. I've been involved in a lot of different series, raced a lot of different cars. I've got a lot of experience. And that was how he sort of landed in AlphaTauri. That was what he was talking about. So, although he is technically a rookie, you can't lump him in with drivers like Sargent or even rookies like Schumacher last year, because he himself is talking about the fact that he's got experience. And I think the team are expecting more, and basically his time is potentially coming to a close already, just through a few races of bad performance and not just being able to get a grip and being thoroughly outclassed by a teammate who's 6 years younger.
That's one of his big problems, isn't it? Obviously he's not performing, but he's got a teammate who is outperforming the car. And also, he's in a pit of Red Bull who are known to be brutal. Like, if you don't perform, you're gone. Because we've got another 10 drivers here who are queuing up to take your seat. They've got that position of luxury, but also what it means to the driver is if you don't hit the ground running, essentially, you will be replaced swiftly. And I think, as you just said, in the next 3 races, after the next 3 races, I think you might be looking at someone else in that seat.
I just think it's interesting because obviously with Yuki they've given him a couple of years, and typically with a rookie, that's probably what you'd want to do.
Yeah.
Because they need time to get up to speed and stuff. And yeah, I just think for de Vries, like maybe he does need that, but coming in with the sort of the amount of experience that he's been touting as that he's got, yeah, it's a tricky one. And he needs to turn it around fast. And I think this is where it gets interesting, because this is where now if the pressure wasn't on him enough, it's fully on him now, and it's fully on him in public. I think you're going to start seeing a lot more questions to him in the next couple of races about this interview with Marco, and it's a sink or swim moment.
Yeah, it is.
You saw it with Albon at Red Bull, saw it with Gasly at Red Bull, where clearly there's pressure. The difference was there that the team didn't come out publicly and sort of stomp the drivers until they were announced as gone. Marco has sort of done that a little bit here, but they crumbled under the pressure of having to pull out results, and they just weren't able to do it. And then it's a feedback loop of a bad performance, need to do better, push too much, struggle, whatever, repeat. I just wonder how de Vries is going to be able to handle that now that the sights are fully on him.
It's was going to say, just lastly on this one, do you think, though, that if you were to sink under that pressure, maybe Formula One just isn't for you?
Absolutely.
Because it's a pressure cooker environment. When you think about it, it's a very unique sport in the sense that only 20 people in the world can do it at one time.
Yeah.
And how many people want to do it? Yeah. So it's like any other sport, you could probably just float your way through because there's, let's say football, for instance, there's like 30 players in a squad, there's 20 teams in a league, there's hundreds of thousands of players across the world. In Formula One, there's 20 seats.
Yeah.
It's one of the ultimate pressure cooker environments, and if you can't thrive under that pressure and perform under that pressure, the sport just absolutely isn't for you.
Yeah, totally. Because like at the top level, if you believe in yourself enough that you think you'd be competing for championships, that's an insane amount of pressure to be under every single race and every single, interaction with the media, every single interaction with your team. That's in the background. And you look at the greats of the sport, you Hamilton, you Verstappen, even from previous years, they've both performed under insane pressure.
How much pressure must they both have been under in that race? The Lewis versus Max.
Not even just that race. Look at the whole season. Look at the second half of the season where everyone knows that they're up against each other in a title fight. And you can go back through the history of Formula One through not just, them, but you'll go back to Senna and Prost, you'll go back to Vettel and Alonso, you'll go back to Schumacher. Everyone who has risen to the top has been insane with a car, but also been able to perform under insane scrutiny and insane pressure. And yeah, it's sort of a big test now, and unfortunately for De Vries, it's not to do with fighting for a championship. It's not to do with fighting for wins or even points at the moment. It's literally just good performances, not crashing the car, having a decent race, qualifying well, and it's just not there so far. So I guess, publicly now the sort of the crosshairs are on him. And the next couple of races, we're going to see whether he will have a seat. I mean, I'll be brutally honest. I don't even see why, if he sort of picks up his performance a bit and he does okay, I don't really understand why he'd be there for a couple more years anyway. I feel like Red Bull must. I don't know. I don't know whether they're using him as a seat warmer for the likes of Liam Lawson, who's currently racing Super Formula, but who is much, much younger. I think he's 21, and is showing more promise than Nyck is currently. I don't really see a future for him beyond this season, regardless. But maybe it comes sooner.
Sorry, Nyck.
Who knows? Yeah, sorry, Nyck, because he does, in his interviews and stuff, he comes across as a nice fella, and it's never nice to kind of see someone struggle and fail. It's never nice to see someone on the ropes and not know what to do with it, not be able to turn things around. Yeah, we saw it with Ricciardo for the last couple of years, Albon and Gasly at Red Bull.
Even
There's
Mick.
been plenty of drivers. Mick, yeah, another one. But it's just the brutal nature of Formula One. You're not there because you're a nice person. You're there because you're a good driver. And if you're not, there's plenty of other guys waiting outside the doors to take your seat.
Yep.
So, yeah, whatever happens, the ultimatum is set. And in 3 races' time, Nyck has got to prove himself, or he might not be in that AlphaTauri anymore.
No, he might not.
Wow.
Should we?
I wouldn't fancy that.
No. Should we end this one on a quick look ahead to the next race and then call it?
Yeah. So, will Nyck be in the seat at Imola?
Yes.
No. Yeah. Well, yeah. A quick look ahead to Imola. I think we've got a sprint weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So, sprint weekends seem to be the only thing that Red Bulls kind of struggle with a little bit at the moment, because you get the one practice session to set up your car, and then obviously, are we still doing that weird format that we've got now, where we've got race qualifying and then sprint qualifying and then sprint race and then race?
I assume so, because it'd be weird to just chop and change them rules whenever they fancy. I would assume it would be the same format.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't put it past them to do it, but maybe they will. So, yeah, let's assume it is that one practice session. Don't know if Red Bull struggle with setup, maybe they'll only be half a second faster than everyone else.
Maybe they'll only end up first and second.
Yeah. Yeah, looking ahead, I guess everyone's bringing upgrades. I don't necessarily think that all the upgrades are suddenly going to mean that everyone's a lot closer to Red Bull. I think you've got to bear in mind that upgrades take time to sort of understand how they're working on the car and adjust the setup. So it could be over the next couple of races that we see things start to take effect, and then people might start jumping up. I know Mercedes are bringing big upgrades, aren't they? Ferrari are bringing big upgrades. I believe Alfa are bringing upgrades. Alfa Romeo and I think AlphaTauri have got an upgrade. I assume everyone will be bringing chunks, but if everyone does, the pecking order probably will largely stay the same while everyone's figuring things out.
I mean, there's an argument to say that some people's upgrades might work better than others. But yeah, the crux of the matter is that it's not going to change who wins the race. I would be very, very surprised. So yeah, I mean, it's just going to be the fight for midfield, chopping and changing and toing and throwing and going one step forward, 2 steps back, and that's going to be where it gets interesting. I think the Red Bull could not upgrade for the next 3 years and still be 40 seconds ahead of everyone else.
I think the only thing that makes Imola, I don't know if it does, to be fair. I was going to say, I feel like Imola is a harder circuit to overtake on than Miami and Baku were. And we saw that last year, with cars kind of getting stuck. But in fairness, the Red Bull's so good with the DRS and stuff that it's probably not going to be that tricky. I think the only circuit, realistically, coming up soon where we could potentially see something other than a Red Bull near the top is Monaco.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Only takes one bad qualifying, doesn't it?
Exactly, yeah. And it takes one insane pole lap. And unlike Baku, the Red Bulls won't be able to just breeze by in Monaco.
No.
And realistically, they might not fight it too hard either if they are behind, because they're in a championship fight of their own, just the two of them. So yeah, so I guess What are we? Should we do some predictions for Imola? I mean, I don't know whether it's worth putting ourselves on the spot for what essentially we don't know.
Yeah. Nor have
I think it's
going
to be. Yeah, I think it's going to be Red Bulls up at the top, and I think it's probably going to be the same mix of Ferrari, Mercedes, and Aston below them. I hope there's some weather because I feel like rain would spice things up a little bit, and I just hope we get some good racing because I wasn't fully sold on the sprint format changes that they made. I think having a mini race inside the race weekend just felt a bit weird.
On the surface, it seems like a good idea, but in practice, it's not. Is it really?
No, it just it was like, I don't know. Yeah, having a race weekend in a race weekend. So you're just watching the same thing essentially twice. But who knows? Maybe it'll be better at Imola. What are you looking forward to see?
The same, really. Just a good race.
Yeah.
Just because you keep getting excited for them, don't you? And then it's a bit of a letdown, and then I don't know.
On to the next.
Then it's just the next one will be better. So you just want a good race. I know who's going to win. I know who's going to come last. So just give me something exciting in the middle, and I'll be happy.
Yeah. The meat in the sandwich. Let's see what happens there.
But I'm looking forward to it.
If not, we can always watch some more GT racing with Mr. Marshmallow.
Gonna have to get a t-shirt and a hat, maybe a tattoo. I don't know.
Biggest fans, face tattoo. I think.
Yeah.
Totally. Well, I think that was a pod. That was an off-week pod.
Absolutely was. Enjoyed that.
And I'm excited to jump back into race weeks again. We've got a few more coming up.
Be nice.
But I'm also excited, as we said, to explore some other areas of racing. So if there are any series that you think we should watch, please let us know.
Absolutely.
Comment them. Tell us if there's any big races coming up. I think both of us did mention at one point that we'd like to try and watch the Indy 500, and I know that's coming up quite soon. I still don't exactly understand it, but we'll give it our best shot. But yeah, anything you think we'd enjoy, shout, let us know, and we'll try and check them out. And until the next episode, yeah, we'll leave it there. Thanks for listening, as always.
Thank you. See you next
Ciao.
week.